Hello, I'm Roy Richardson, and this is the Dynamic Business Leaders Podcast. Welcome back to the Dynamic Business Leaders Podcast. I'm Roy Richardson, joined by my insightful co-host and wingman, Sean Murphy. Sean, another week, another segment, and this one's going to be really, really exciting.
It is, man. And look, it's going to be a challenge too, because unlike the past, I know Adam probably as long as this segment is going to be going on. But when I met him, very, very impressive. The story that we're going to discuss this morning about who he is, it just resonated big time. And man, I cannot wait. Big time, can't wait. So Adam, I'm looking forward to it.
Thank y'all for having me. It's a pleasure to be here. So
awesome, folks. So today's guest is a second-generation entrepreneur who built his career the old-fashioned way, earning credibility before earning the title. Adam Mikkelson is the president, CEO, and owner of Liberty Investment Properties. And since joining the family business in 2005, he's worked through operational roles, learned the industry from the ground up, and today leads a company that has participated in more than $1 billion in capital investments across more than 80 properties nationwide. But what makes Adam's story interesting isn't the size of the deals. It's what happens when responsibility, leadership, faith, family, and personal adversity all converge, and how those experiences shape the leader you become. Adam, welcome to the Dynamic Business Leaders Podcast.
thank you both for having me. It's a pleasure to be here and get a little light into my journey.
Man, I love sharing these stories to the next generation business owners and leaders. I remember when I started my career back in the 90s at oldie discount stockbrokers. And back then, a lot of family businesses, they were selling or the next generation wasn't doing a good job of keeping them going. And so we spent a bunch of time, there's society as a whole spent a bunch of time studying family dynamics and trends and things like that. And I know when I was at the Leadership Institute, that was a big component of what we did as far as helping that next generation. So I marvel and am impressed when I see second, third, fourth generation business like Adam does. And that, again, that was one of the things that really struck me. So Adam, I'm glad you're here. Your story has a lot of layers to it, man. And I think that people are going to connect with that more than just about the business that you've done. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah. And you know, Sean, one of the themes we're definitely going to explore today is stewardship, whether that's people, capital, relationships, opportunity, or even your own health. Every leader out there eventually learns they're responsible for protecting something bigger than themselves. So before we jump in, today's episode is brought to you by Aurora Infotech, helping organizations grow with confidence by protecting the systems and data they depend on, so innovation never comes at the cost of trust. Adam, let's start before Liberty. Sean, take it away.
All right. One thing you mentioned about stewardship, we were talking before the segment about the church, right? The church that he grew up in, where he went. And I grew up in First Presbyterian Church of Orlando. And the church that he grew up in are very similar. And stewardship is not just about money. It's about the full individual. And I love, again, when we met the first time, I remember sitting in that office with those brown leather seats. We were talking that stuff, and fast forward to, 6-7 months ago, I'm like, Adam, I have to have you on the podcast. And there was no hesitation, but you were flying airplanes at 16 years old. Most teens are trying to figure out what they're going to do on the weekend. Where did that interest come from?
Yeah, it's an interesting story. Both my grandfathers actually flew, and I remember growing up originally from Oregon. I would always, we've been in Orlando since I was 3, but we would always go back there. And every time we'd go back to Oregon, we'd get up in Grandpa's plane and go flying. And knowing what I know now, it probably wasn't safe because he was a little bit more of what would be considered as a wild man in the air. And
Right.
What that did is it just kind of brought about this fascination with flying. I mean, I think as a young boy, everyone kind of looks up into the sky and you're just like, wow, how is that piece of metal flying through the air? And so one of the things my grandfather, kind of instilled was just that love of adventure. And so it was great because my dad hadn't learned to fly. He was 38. I was 16, and he goes, "You want to do this?" And so at that point, anything I could do with my dad was like, the answer is yes, let's go. Let's try it.
Awesome.
So it was one of those kind of adventures, one of those tasks. It was just like, man, I think this is a pretty fascinating thing. Just, a challenge that at a young age, even before I was driving, I was doing my flight training. So it was pretty wild to, do my learner's permit and then go up in an airplane, and I could fly an airplane, but I couldn't yet drive a car. And so it was this kind of goal that I had set out early on to do. And I had, at one point I was like, anything that needs a license, I'm going to be able to get it. So there was an idea of skydiving. There was an idea of scuba diving. There was all these things of just saying, man, like, let's go out and, find some adventure and conquer some things that are challenging. So that's kind of how it came about.
Well, I can tell you as a fellow pilot who also flew at 16 and started at 13, I know the buzz you're talking about. I can totally relate to it. And man, what a different world it is up there, completely disconnected. But you're absolutely right. I mean, here, society trusting a 16-year-old or 17 to solo, right? Or 16 to solo, actually, with a piece of metal, but yet we couldn't get behind four wheels and drive down the road legally, right?
Yeah.
So sticking on that age group, what did 16-year-old Adam think life was going to look like at that point in time?
Yeah, my parents always said I was kind of 16 going on 40. So
Old
from
soul.
an early age, yeah, I always kind of had this, this vision, this dream for what my life was going to look like. I didn't really empathize with some of the people that were like, I'm not sure who I want to be when I grow up, because at that point in life, for whatever reason, call it kind of the nature of who I am or the nurturing of what I had through my family. I just felt clarity around, what I wanted to do, the things that were important to me, and ultimately, as a 16-year-old, it was the problem my parents had to do was they had to slow me down to enjoy the journey. So my problem was I was always looking ahead saying, okay, well, when I get my pilot's license, when I get my driver's license, when I graduate high school, when I get to college, when I go into business, when I start a family, and they're like, hey, enjoy the journey. And so later on in my story, you'll hear about other ways that I've had that I've been slowed down to enjoy the journey in life.
So if we had met you at 18, 2 years later, would we have predicted that you'd be running Liberty one day?
I would say my close friends in high school, probably the answer would be yes. And, there was one of the things I'll distinctly remember. It was, I was in school, and my dad would come home, and he'd come home and bring a sack of Taco Bell, and we'd sit and we'd drop it on the counter, and everyone's eating hard shell, soft shell tacos, and talking about what dad did that day. And so one of the things, again, with family businesses is you have this kind of benefit of getting information and knowledge and having conversations that other people without family business experience may not have. And so I was always drawn to that. I was always drawn to, hey, what kind of personnel challenges are you dealing with? Or they said that, or they did that, or how did you react? And, just kind of working on, having those dinner conversations all through life into quote business.
Well, your parents built Liberty from the ground up, which is awesome. What were some of the things that you watched them do growing up that you didn't appreciate back then, but you understand completely today, man?
So my parents moved my older sister and myself to all the way across the country, from Oregon to Florida in '85. And it was a big move for them. They're each one of 5 kids, all the families still out on the West Coast. And so didn't have any family here, picked up and moved to pursue doing real estate. And so little known fact is Liberty Investment Properties, the name actually came from Liberty Street in Albany, Oregon, which is where my dad was, where he grew up.
Cool.
And so, so they came over, and, again, we talk about it now, but, they were rubbing 2 nickels together to figure it out. And, one of the things that I'll never forget, I still have a picture of it. I think I was 8, 9 years old. And it was when my dad was building up his first self-storage facility. And, I'm in my braided belt, my, pleated khakis, a little polo, and, walking the storage site. Right. And just recently I pulled that picture back up and I looked down at the date, and it was my birthday. And I said, at what point did you think celebrating my birthday on the construction job site was something that I wanted to do?
Right.
But we would go in. My mom did the books. My dad, we'd work it on the weekends. We'd, just all kind of all hands on deck. And that was one of the things that I would say, seeing my parents move all the way across the country with just our little family of 4 at that time. We there was 2 other siblings that came after, but it was us. It was family. It was togetherness. It was this blended mix of work and life kind of all coexisted. And so seeing my parents put in the work, make the sacrifices, and really and do it in a way where it didn't feel like it took over our childhood. Like I still feel very, very blessed with the time and experience that we had, but doing it in a way that was really healthy and integrated.
Right.
That's awesome. And I will say something about the older folk. The vast majority were probably rubbing 2 nickels together, but you would never really know that from the outside, right? And you would never really miss that from a family perspective, right? Because it was really about the unit. So kudos to you, man. And so what values from your family and that entire experience have stayed with you throughout every stage of your life?
Yeah, I think there's a couple things that kind of was taught. One is be a lifelong learner, right?
Right.
We don't ever know it all.
Yeah.
And so always pursue knowledge, pursue learning, surround yourself with people that are going to challenge your thinking. Another is grit and hard work. So sometimes you just got to get up and do the hard things. That was instilled. And then also just kind of an integrity and teachability. Right. Doing what you say you're going to do, being a person that's humble, being a person that's teachable. Those are some of kind of the core values that within our family, whether they knew it or not intentionally, were kind of passed down through kind of their modeling of leadership within our family.
Oh, very cool. Cool. Well, outside of business, what shaped you growing up? Was it a mentor? Was it your faith? Was it your family? We see that family is very important, right? Or was it sports?
Yeah, I would say it's kind of a combination of everything. I mean, I think one of the things that was modeled early on, I had kind of a mentor when I was in high school. He was a youth leader that really, one of the things just growing up, we kind of always went to church. I was probably the 10 or 12-year-old, asleep in the pew, bored in the sermons, like what are we doing here? What's going on? But really between kind of friends within high school in a personal friend to this day, a mentor of mine, really kind of challenged me into the thinking of, at some point in life, you've got to decide, just because you got a last name doesn't mean that defines who you're going to be and what you're going to decide.
Yes,
and so your family unit, you have the benefit of carrying that. And some people carries that with really great experiences, and some people have really bad experiences. And so at the end of the day, you continue to be a cycle breaker or a cycle maker. And so as you take that through,
Adam, you're full of nuggets today.
Yeah.
As you take that through your life,
that one I'm writing down.
You've got to make a choice. And so again, going back to the 16-year-old me, 18-year-old me, like it was 9th grade where I was like, man, I got to decide, do I even believe this stuff? Do I even really agree with what my parents are saying? Right. You have this tension in life where you grow up in a family unit, but yet you become an individual. Right. And so you're going to eventually lead your family at one point. So for me, having that mentor, having someone beyond the voice, beyond my parents, to be able to kind of speak into that and challenge me was awesome. And so carrying that through life, I'm a firm believer, you got to have people that are mentoring you, and you better be mentoring someone else, because the person that you are today is going to be shaped by the experiences of people before. And so, growing up, sports was a big thing. I played football, basketball, soccer, the whole thing. Had a pretty wild experience of getting very involved into ice hockey through high school. So I was one of those, again, odd people, but excelled at ice hockey, being a Florida boy. And so played for a state travel team, played in different, showcases up in Boston, different places. It was just, again, I'm a very competitive guy. And so I like when people say, well, I don't think you can do that. It's like, well, let's see how this, see how this works out. So, so outside of business, that was kind of what shaped my life. And so,
Very cool.
Adventure, integrity, having people, that have gone before you and really challenging to build what is called, in my life, kind of this foundational belief system, that I then now make decisions off of.
Nice.
Right.
Nice. So I got to ask you something here. You talked about being on the ice hockey team, as a Florida boy. But did your teammates know that you had a leg up coming from Oregon?
It's funny. They would say, they wouldn't even know where is Oregon, right? Like they're like, what is this? Like, are you a lumberjack? Like, what's going on?
No Google Maps back then, man.
Didn't have a clue.
Awesome. So Adam, you joined Liberty in 2005 and worked your way through the business. What did those early years actually look like?
One of the things, so I actually joined at the same time as my older sister's husband as well, so my brother-in-law. So that was super fun to be able to join together and really get in at the ground floor.
Nice.
Yeah. One of the things that, carrying the last name, there's a perception of, of course there's the boss's son, right? And I was always very sensitive to that. And so when I started out as a store manager. I started out sweeping units. I started out cleaning. I'm a firm believer in kind of servant leadership through, right? Like I'm not going to ask anyone to do something I'm not willing to do.
That's right.
Starting out in kind of the operations world was great. It really kind of gave me an opportunity to truly be able to see and understand the customers, see and understand the operations. And really, I'm a firm believer that most businesses, where the value is at the cash register. And so that's where the interaction happens.
Oh, yeah.
And so most leaders stay so far into strategy and they stay outside of, the touch points of your customer that they make decisions without really having an empathy or an understanding of how it really impacts not only their team members, but also the people that they're serving. And so, starting from the ground up, that was kind of my initial, was always willing to do things that others didn't want to do, and really felt like I wanted to earn the respect, right? I don't think I was, just because I was the boss's son, would come into it and say, well, it's because I said so, or it's because daddy told me that this is what we're doing, right? It is earning through work ethic, through integrity, through the actions, really leadership in a way that you're getting respect to the peers.
Excellent.
Nice.
Excellent. Man, great information. Hey, what's one responsibility from those early years that taught you lessons that you're still using today? Because you just gave us some good ones. You might not even be able to give us anymore after what you gave us, man. That was like great. So don't force nothing.
No, I mean it's the one thing that hopefully what you all will see and what people see when they experience me, and when friends and family and coworkers is the authenticity of who I am. Right? Like who I am today, who I am, getting groceries at Publix, who I am interacting with my family or friends. Like I want that all to be the same person.
Yes.
So, carrying that responsibility of just being authentic and being who you are, all of the good, the strengths, the weaknesses, the realities, is something that I continue to strive to today, because I'm still learning.
And that's a blessing, man. That's, I tell people every day in my line of work in cybersecurity, one of the things I love about this field is that it shifts and changes very quickly, and you're always learning new stuff. So totally can relate there. And let me ask you, at what point did this stop feeling like the family business and start feeling like Adam's personal calling?
Yeah, I think there was periods of time where I call it kind of an analogy, I was stepping onto my dad's boat, right? So I'm a deckhand on his boat, right? He's built this company, I'm in the back rowing, I'm fixing things, I'm doing but there was a point where he handed over the helm, right? And was saying, okay, now I'm giving you some authority. I'm giving you leadership. I tell people in family businesses, I've seen them transitions happen really well, and I've seen them fail miserably. And I tell people there's really two things that need to happen. One is there needs to be an acceptance of responsibility. Typically, the next gen either isn't ready to accept it, or they're naive in thinking they have the ability to accept it. Right. On the other side, there's got to be a releasing of control. So from an entrepreneur, it's really hard to get out of the driver's seat and shift into the passenger seat. And so you've got that balance of accepting responsibility and releasing of control has to happen. And usually when one's ready for one, the other's not ready for the other. And so that's where the dynamic of, going from, okay, this is a family business that my dad created, working with him on kind of engaging with that to say, okay, this is a business that's being handed over. And now I'm stewarding a resource of time, talent, and treasure that is, okay, I'm at the driver's seat here. And so I don't know if I can tell you a point in time when that happened, but I would say that was kind of a journey of learning and handing off and kind of saying, okay, eventually to a point, when in 2021, when I bought our business from my dad, it was like, okay, this is now your ship.
Yeah.
Nice.
Very, very cool. Very cool. A lot of people think that building a business is easier than taking over the family business. And I know through experience that it's not necessarily. Every case is always different, right?
Yep.
There's people that can start a business and they can be very successful, but we know the percentages of failure versus success. We also know I'm not at home in my office, but if I look at my bookshelf, I can find 2 to 3 books that's all about transition, and what not to do versus what to do. And there's a whole market out there. So kudos to you. But what do we completely miss? You touched on some of this stuff about, the transition. What do you feel like people typically miss or misunderstand about the journey of taking over the family business versus starting it, and that it's not so easy?
I think the analogy I use is like building a house, right? There's different challenges of renovating a house versus building it from ground up, right? Ground up, you can plan it. You can say, okay, I want to have the hallways here and the bedrooms here.
Exactly where the electrical cables are running.
Yeah. With renovation, you got structural walls. You can't move. Like there's certain things that you're just like, you can't do differently. And so that's the difference of, as I look at like the family business, like I came into a renovating world of like, okay, there's some systems and structures here that I don't want to forsake and I don't want to neglect because it's built it's what is needed to get us to here. But what needed to get us to here isn't what's needed to get us to there. Again, I think the misconception is that you can step into a family business and just take over from where it's at. But the reality is that the next generation has got to get in. And unfortunately, they can live in the house and they can do that. But they actually got to, if they want to take it to there, they need to do some renovation work. And some of that is working on, the core values of what was created, but then taking it into what it is that now you are going to be defining as your home with your touches and your flares and where you really want to go.
I love that analogy of using the home to bring that all together and particularly, building from the ground up versus renovating. Knowing where the electrical wires and the plumbing are is in the walls before you drive a nail through it would bring great advantage. So you've been on this journey, been in the family business for a while, and in 2021 you became the owner and CEO. Was there a moment where it suddenly felt like, holy, this is happening?
Yeah, I think, that was one of the things. It probably was about a 5-year transition for me. Things started to transition where we were seeing, okay, my leadership was moving into a place where it was like, my dad uses this analogy, or he says, I must decrease so you can increase.
Oh, I love that.
There was this like decrease of him and this increase of what I was doing, where it was like, Oh man, the weight of this is real. Like
That's right.
it's like someone, lifting a weight saying, okay, now I was doing the squats. Now here, I'm going to put the barbell on your shoulder
Yeah.
and now you're going to feel the weight of this. That was probably about a 5 year transition.
And I would say that's probably pretty unique in some ways because, and you hit on it before in terms of relinquishing power and control so that the other can assume that power and control. And a lot of family businesses and dynamics, there is the intent to relinquish, but not necessarily the action of relinquishing. And so you end up with a lot of friction. So kudos to you and your dad.
He's a good man. He's a good man.
Awesome.
He sounds like he's been to a few Promise Keepers rallies or something like that, because I must decrease and he must increase is something that I grew up with at church, man, going to those rallies. But anyway, you've given us some great analogies. I love. But tell me, what was harder than you expected with the transition?
What was harder than I expected was, I think, managing through some of the relational challenges of that leadership transition. There was the ideal and then there was the real. And so I think the problem is being a person that sets out and has his goals and, from an early age, saying, man, like sometimes I can live in my ideal of saying, well, I think that this is what it should look like. But really wrestling with the challenges of the real is what was harder than I expected. And so a lot of that came down to, some of the relational tensions and dynamics and, having more of I'm a more pretty black and white thinker, but getting more in kind of touch with the wake that I may create through my decisions and how that may impact others involved in the organization.
Yeah, that's indeed a learning curve to go through. Yeah. Looking at your story from the outside, Adam, people could easily assume it's been one steady climb, but every meaningful leadership journey has a chapter most people never really see. For you, one of those chapters came in 2018.
Yeah, man, you've spoken openly about experiencing a panic attack. What was happening in your life at that point? And again, I thank you for sharing this, because we need people to lean into who they are in their journeys and stop worrying about what others think. So, with that being said,
right? Yeah, no, it's one of the things that to your point, most people want to live in the Instagram world or the, hey, everything's great, everything's wonderful.
That's right.
I would say up until that point in life, through academics, through school, through friends, through different things, my life looked pretty dang easy, and it was very accomplished at that point. And so work came easy, school came easy, relationships came easy. Got married when I was 21. We had a little bit of challenges with some fertility stuff, but had a beautiful family, 3 kids. Everything was going great, right? Making money in business, all that. And it's funny, I'm the guy that my friends joke that I'm going to be crossing the finish line of life smoking. Like just because I'm all go all the time, all gas, right? Like we're like, man, like your capacity is huge. Yeah.
Right.
Like, how do you do all this stuff? How do you hit, like, is your brain going to explode? Like what's going, like there's all these things. And that was just kind of the mentality that I had, right? Like more is better. Let's go. And so, 2018, I was at actually a charity event and, started to go flush, heart started racing. And I thought I was going to pass out. I thought I was having a heart attack. I was, in my 30s, and I was like, I'm dying. It was the first time in my life that I actually felt like something's not right. And so went to the ER, never forget it. My wife took me there. They were like, we see a lot of people, there's something wrong with this guy. So they rushed me back. I didn't have to wait in the ER, did all the tests, this, that, and the other. They came back and said, everything's great. You just have low potassium. And I go, Doc, you're telling me a banana would have fixed this. I said, there's something else going on here. Okay. Like
that must have been an expensive banana.
I know,
it was
right?
a very expensive banana.
Right.
But, but we were moving houses, we were doing all these different things. And so, at that point, it was really the Lord just kind of saying, hey, you have high capacity. You're a very capable person, but is this your plan for your life, or is this my plan for your life? And he goes, I haven't really been able to stop you yet, but this is going to stop you. And so what it did is it created this period. It was this kind of fear period in my life where I was like, wait, I don't have the answers. I don't know, and so they diagnosed it as a panic attack. I'd been having some migraines before that. Being a pilot, Roy, what happens if you get an ocular migraine and you're up there and you got to come and, you're flying IFR through clouds and you got to land and you got to focus and you can't see things. And it's a problem. And so, at that point, it was wild because for my relationship with my wife, Chandler, that was the first time she was like, he's usually got it all together. Like there's not, like, what do I do?
Short circuit.
So, but it was the break that I needed. And so I think in growing, being a very driven person, there's seasons of life and you cannot, run all out without having rest. And what I was doing was I was internalizing and carrying that barbell of the weight of the leadership change. And now I've got, families that I'm responsible for. Now I've got a business that I'm leading. Now I've got, all of these things that are kind of hitting at once. And to me, it was the Lord saying, hey, is this your plan or is this mine?
Right.
And so for me, I went through this whole journey of just saying, okay, all right, fine. And this is where my boat analogy comes in, is at that point in life, it was really, I felt kind of called to say, you know what? He's calling me to build the boat and the sails and trust him for the wind and the weather. And the reality is that there's going to be times where we're sailing this boat and it feels like, this is like euphoria, right? Like everything's going well. And then there's going to be times where there's no wind and we're just sitting and we feel like nothing's happening in life. There's gonna be times where there's storms coming in and we think this boat's going to capsize, but ultimately is back to the foundational principles of why are we here? What are we doing? And what are we trying to get accomplished? And I think for me at that point, it was this reality and realization that, money doesn't do it. Things aren't doing it. You hear the stories of people talking on their deathbed that what are the things that they wish they would have done differently if they had known, right? It's the people you surround yourself with.
Yes.
It's the integrity that you carry and ultimately the relationships that you have with your business, with your family, with your people. And so that was that period of time where it was a reorienting phase. And I think, again, to use a navigation mentality, it's like when you're going through life, Roy, you would understand this. If we're going on a heading of 360, right? If we're going 100 miles, we may, we'd be fine. But if we go to, basically to 350 over 1,000 miles,
that gap gets bigger and bigger. Yep.
Correct. And so that was the divergence in my life of saying, course correct. We got to get back to what really matters. And so at that point in time was this period where I said, all right, you know what? Hands off. Here we go. I'm gonna trust in this process. But it really gave me the vision for what we wanted Liberty to be, which was a business that created both yield and impact. And so yield, it's a money making business, right? We got to make money. It's gotta make sense. But then on the impact side, we have an opportunity to create an impact in the communities that we invest, the customers that we serve, the employees that work with us, and the shareholders that partner with us. And so as a leader, I've got this lens that I look at all my decisions to say, okay, what's the yield and impact? What's the yield and impact? And I would say before that point, it was more like, hey, what's the yield? How do we go and make money? How do we scale? How do we grow? And now it's more about a kind of a sacred rhythm of slowing down to say, no, is this decision going to create the net result to the relationships in your life that you want?
You use the phrase, I mentioned it earlier, and I'm going to come back to it. You use the phrase, relationships are the currency of life. Where did that perspective come from? I personally love it. I live in Orlando because I
Yeah.
believe in that. I was moved to Tampa to work for this firm, to get in management. And when you work for these big, global companies, you'll find yourself in Timbuktu if you want to get up in management, right? And I was like, nope, I want to go back to Orlando because that's where my relationships are. And 20 plus years later, or almost 30 years later, here we are. So tell me about your perspective, where that perspective comes from.
Yeah, I think part of it again is looking at people that have lived before
Right.
me and done it well, right? At the end of the day, we want to be sitting there in our deathbed through our period of time that we're here and say, man, well done, right? Well done. And so looking at those that had the good relationships, like what were the things that they really valued? And so, people can either use people or use things. And a lot of people in business will use people to get the things. And so for me, I just have seen the value that relationships carry. It's not always what you know, but sometimes it's who you know.
Yeah.
And it's the trust that you built. And it's the trust that you build with those types of people that, going through certain periods of life in our business, we had to deal with hard conversations with lenders, with people that are selling properties, with all these different kind of people. But at the end of the day, what I saw was successful was the trust that built, and the relationship was what ended up, netting the best result. And so as we look, instead of using people, to me, I just have a belief that fostering quality relationships is where you can truly drive eternal value. It may not make sense in the short term, but ultimately I will never regret maintaining a good relationship with somebody over anything else, just because I do think that that's kind of innate in who we are and what we're created to do, is to connect with people. We've got this big AI thing that's pushing, and I think it's important. It's going to help us, but people enabled technology is where it's at, and you still cannot take away the soul of individuals. And so, when you can look at a person and give them focus, give them an attention, give them a piece of you to say, hey, you matter. I care about you. Even if this isn't good for me, I trust that mine will come later.
That's right.
Right. So taking care of that relationship is something that's always been core to who I am.
Very cool.
Wow. I'm, there's so many, I'm running out of note paper here in terms of some of these really good nuggets that I'm putting down. But Adam, that's, and first of all, incredible. And I know you're also a man that's deeply rooted in your faith, and faith and family have clearly shaped the way you make decisions. So, what's the biggest contributor to how you build trust with investors, with your team, and everyone connected to the business?
Yeah, I'll never forget it. When we were going through the great financial crisis, we had partnered with Goldman Sachs, big private equity groups, and we were in a tough spot. And the one thing and this is something that my dad set as an example, is I'll never forget the managing director for Goldman would come into our office, and, they were dealing with all sorts of crazy challenges, right? And the one thing that stood out to me, this guy said, he said, with you all, I know I may not like the answer you have to say, but I know it's true. And so, when challenging things happen, building that trust around integrity, around truth, about doing what you say you're going to do, even if it is harmful to you to some extent, of saying, man, this is really going to be painful. Like, either one, I messed up, or I'm sorry. But then two, when I say I'm going to do something, right, we do it. And so to me, that is where it's not just what you say, but it's what you do. And over a period of time is where trust is built. You can't walk into a relationship and just say, hey, trust me. Right. Like, just trust me.
That's probably when you don't want to trust them.
Right. It's an earned skill.
Earned. Yeah.
And I think,
yes.
I think the other piece too is, again, I tell people it's like, faith is very important to me. It may not be very important to the people that I'm dealing with in relationship, and that's okay. But I'm going to be functioning with a kind of an integrity and a lens and a conviction that is going to lead my decisions based upon that as my core value and my foundation. So, I've got, again, some of the things that hopefully when people interact with Liberty, when they interact with Adam, when they interact with people, my goal is that they leave that interaction better than when they came into it.
Right.
And that's not because of me. That's just because of who's in me. And so at the end of the day, that's where I'm hoping that my legacy, my history, my life of business and family, where that continues to make an impact on people's lives.
I'm at a loss for words, man. Doing these podcasts, I tell people all the time, if I had to do it all over again, I would probably get a primary degree in psychology, because people are just so fascinating, man.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
everybody has an incredible story.
Yep.
And that's one of the things that I hear people, they're like, "Oh, Sean, you got an incredible story." And I'm like, "Man, you got an incredible story too." And so listening to Adam is just like a wealth of knowledge and nuggets, man. And so I want to get into this. This is something that is another one that's deeply personal to me. You're passionate about fostering and adoptive care. Where did that passion come from?
From pain. So it was, I mentioned earlier when my wife and I got married my, my senior year of college. It was spring break. I had a wild spring break over my senior year of college. So we were on our honeymoon. It was wonderful. But I got married really early. I was 19 when I met my wife. I got married at 21. And, so I was young and I was ready to go, right? My senior year superlative or whatever they call it I was the class dad, right? Like I'm the guy, they're like, this guy's just going to be a dad. Like he's on it.
You've been purpose driven for a long time, That's awesome. I love it. Yeah. Old soul. That's what's up.
Yeah. So my wife was like, I don't know, was that because you were boring or was that because you actually would be a good dad? I don't know. But at that point, I was like, you get married and then you have kids, right? I couldn't wait to be a dad. Like, again, I had such a blessing of a childhood and, family. And, so I was just excited to kind of pour that out into my children. Right. And you get married and you're a little naive to think, okay, well, you just have kids and that's how it works. Right. And so got pregnant within a couple of years, had a miscarriage, right? So painful. Right. And the reality is that's another silent struggle that a lot of people go through.
Absolutely.
It's a challenge, man. Like emotionally, you're like, oh my gosh, go from the highs of highs to low. And there's pain there. And so had another miscarriage. Right. I'm like, gosh, we just want to be parents. We want to be. And so there was an opportunity that came to me through a friend that where we almost adopted a little girl.
Right.
And so he was a counselor, had a mom, and we're like, that wasn't in my cards. That wasn't in my playbook when I was 16. But really kind of opened up my eyes to, the reality is that we're all adopted, right? Like I believe we're all adopted children of God, right? So like at the end of the day, like we're adopted into a family and a legacy.
That's right.
And so whether it's coming through biological or coming through adoption, like it's the story,
That's
right?
That's
and
right.
so, it didn't end up working out. And what was crazy is we were doing fertility treatments. The 1 month we weren't doing any treatments, that's when we got pregnant with our daughter.
Very cool.
And so at that point, it just kind of put this kind of I would say it opened my eyes, right? The passion comes from the pain. It opened my eyes to the opportunity out there of, man, I believe children belong in families. Right. I believe that they need to have a loving mom, a loving father. They need to have leadership and they belong in families. And whether it's done through biological, whether it's done through adoption, whether it's done through fostering, like that's where the opportunity is. And to the same extent of some other 16-year-old who maybe is listening to this thing, like there is a story and a journey ahead for them where they can define their life to create an impact beyond where their circumstance is. And so in fostering and adopting, it was just kind of opened our eyes. So we ended up, got pregnant with our first, had our second 17 months after that, had to take a little break, ended up having a third. And we really kind of came back around to desiring to continue to grow our family. Pregnancy was really tough on my wife. And so we had signed up to adopt a child. Our story, it never ended up getting aligned. And so then we started to look at fostering. And so my wife came home one day, and there's a organization called Commission 127, and she gave $27 to a fundraise for them. And she's like, they support foster and adoptive care. It's just, I feel like this is what we're supposed to do. So, being a smart man, I listened to my wife. And so we signed up, did foster care classes through the state, 8 weeks every Wednesday night. And we ended up, got our first foster placement, little Jeremiah. We originally were getting into it to foster kind of a 4 to 6 year old. Well, the first call we get is a 10-day-old baby who needs a place.
Oh, wow.
And my wife is like, we need to say yes. I was like, we do not have capacity for this. But he came into our life, at 10 days old. And I tell people, me and Jeremiah, he had some demons he was fighting, and me and him were fighting demons through the night. And it was an incredible thing, not only for our family, but for my kids, to care for the life of someone who didn't have support.
That's right.
And so since that period, he got adopted in an amazing family. We had another placement with a 6-year-old. And so at that point, here I am sitting, we kind of decided, okay, our family isn't set to foster, but not all can foster, but all can care,
right,
is the message that Commission 127 says. And so, I'm now on the board of that. I'm helping kind of facilitate awareness for these children that are in and around our community, because people look at us and like, oh, you're a saint. It's like, no. We're just answering yes to a call.
That's right.
So, if you've got capacity in your family, if you've got resource, who doesn't want to care for a vulnerable child?
Yeah.
That to me, I just feel like that's something that just is human nature, should be. And so, any platform, medium that I can help support and encourage that, support others, and doing it is something that I'm very passionate about.
Well, I can tell you that I'm going to reach out to you about Mission 127, because I got adopted by a family, and it opened up my heart to someone loving you unconditionally who barely knows you, right? And so my wife and I had same kind of issues as far as pregnancy is concerned. And we just prayed. We said, Lord, we don't care. We just want to raise children for you. On that morning, on October the 18th of 2006, we held hands and prayed before we went to work. 3:30, we get a phone call that a child was born 2 days prior to that. And Sean Nicholas James Murphy came home 2 days later. And we love our boys and the responsibility that we've been given to help foster them into adult life. And so the point that I'm gonna make is I'm gonna reach out to you about Mission 127, because Dana and I believe that a part of our purpose, we've scaled back just because we've given Nick and Noah all of our capacity. But now that we're at the point where, they're going off to college, and so we want to give back to our community. So I'm gonna reach out to you about that.
Yeah. And I think that's the thing that it is overwhelming to think of, oh man, we're going to bring this in. But I think, Lord gives you seasons. And so there's seasons of caring and what you've invested in your children there. There's a saying that I say that a great man is he who doesn't lose the heart of his children. And so caring for...
But this dude is just full of nuggets. Man.
Caring for the heart of your child, even as, that's where your number one ministry needs to be, right?
Yes.
And then where your service comes is out of your overflow of capacity to care. And that's seasons, right? Right now when they're being raised, like, man, it's all hands on deck. It is chaos, right? But eventually there comes a season, I think most people in life and business say, oh, well, when I retire. This goes back to the joy has to happen in the journey. And if you're not experiencing that, then you need to reorient, look at kind of where you're at to say, okay, how do I experience this joy of either caring for people, fostering a relationship, building into my business in a way that isn't sacrificing the things that at a point in life later down the road, you'll say, man, I wish I had invested more into this.
Right.
Amen to that. Amen to that. And you know, I want to first of all thank you for sharing the story, and thank you for doing what you're doing with Mission 127, and what you and your wife have done. And like Sean said, you know, I think all three of us here are truly blessed to have had other kids come into our lives. And I know with my daughter, when I got married to my wife, and you know, I adopted her, and my wife will tell you today that DNA is a farce. Because my daughter came into my life when she was 8 years old, and today we are, you know, every way, you know, the way we think, the way we handle problems, the way we do stuff, you know, it's so blessings on that. I want to switch gears real quick here with limited time we have left, because you have so many more nuggets that I want to capitalize on to see how many more we can get out of you. But, you know, let's switch a little bit to leadership and building Liberty. Today, Liberty is participating in more than $1 billion of investments across more than 80 properties nationwide. And congratulations on that.
Yeah, congrats.
What does your role actually look like today?
Yeah. Some days it's taking out the trash, Roy.
I know the feeling.
I would be willing to bet every dollar I make in my life that there's a lot of truth to that.
Yeah.
I bet you.
Yeah. So today, again, as I mentioned a little bit of kind of the analogy of the boat. I mean, you know, I'm building the boat, right? I'm renovating the house. We sold most of our assets, 21, 22. And so we've been building back since there. And so, you know, at the end of the day, you know, our goal as a business is to really provide real estate investment opportunities for ourselves, for our investors, and for our partners. And so, as we look at it in real estate, there's really 4 phases of real estate that we execute in. One, it's develop. There's seasons to develop. There's seasons to acquire, seasons to sell, and then seasons to just do nothing.
Right.
And work on, you know, managing your assets. So those are the 4 key elements of what Liberty's doing. Right now, we're in the season of developing. So our primary focus is in self-storage and extended stay hotels. So we've got some unique partnerships in both of those verticals that allow us to really react to the market timing. You know, it's a tough time in the market with debt, with, you know, you got geopolitical issues going on. You got, you know, what are we doing? Where are interest rates? What's happening? But again, back to the fundamentals of, you know, income and cash flow. We're primarily focused on creating income generating assets in the appropriate verticals at the appropriate season. And so we're building, currently we've got a development pipeline of about 15 storage facilities that we're working on. We've got 3 existing hotels. We're building a 4th, but we're in a building phase right now. And so the goal is to build Liberty into a platform vehicle that can continue to hit our foot on the gas when it's time to build, hit our foot on the gas when it's time to buy. And then also when it's time to sell, we'll react to the market timing. So I'm in a building phase of really building our team. We've got a small team of 10 people. I believe in delivering institutional quality execution, but doing it in a way that's different, doing it based on relationships, doing it in an efficient way. And so we're really leaning into that. So this next kind of 5 to 10 years is really establishing that baseline for Liberty to hopefully at one day generationally pass on to, whether it's my kids or someone else to steward into kind of the next phase of growth.
Cool. What's one leadership habit, a system, or discipline that's had the greatest impact on your effectiveness over the last 5 years?
Yeah, I think there's 2 things. One, I would highly encourage is creating org charts of the future. So, you know, like I said, where you're at today may not be where you want to be, but you got to have vision to where, you know, where you lack vision, people perish.
That's right.
So you got to have vision to where you want to be. That's 1. And then 2, calendar blocking is a big thing. So my wife jokes with me, like, if it's not on the calendar, it doesn't happen in my life. You also, people will look at my calendar and get, yeah, it would get anxiety to some extent. My gosh, like what? Wow. But to me, that has created the discipline and foundational of like, okay, there's just certain things that, you know, the non-negotiables, the things that I need to be doing every day. And then working off of that is what's really helped me create the framework for building of this company.
Nice. And so you talk about the building of the company, perfect segue here, because I want to venture into the future of leadership. You know, you mentioned before AI, and it's everything out there is AI now, right? So as technology and AI continue transforming business, where do you see human judgment and relationships become more valuable, and where does it become less valuable?
Yeah, I think AI and technology is more about bringing efficiency and optimization, but this world, there's the qualitative and quantitative in the world,
Mhm.
right? Math is math, black and white thinking. Technology can help with that, right? What technology can't and will never do is handle all of the soft side of the skills of what you need to accomplish in, your work, right? So we use AI as a directional tool to kind of do a lot of the blocking and tackling of, okay, deal underwriting, building efficiencies, anything that's a repetitive task. Let's look at automation. But really what we want to kind of continue to teach our team and interact with is there's the soft skills of relationship of utilizing the technology paired with people is where I think optimization really happens. And so technology in and of itself doesn't scare me. I love it. I think it's going to be, it's going to be great, right? Everyone goes back to when the iPhone, I mean, I had a, flip phone Motorola, which I think is coming back now, but going to the BlackBerry and Palm Pilot and then iPhones now. I was like,
So
man,
you mean to say we may be walking around with the brick soon?
yeah, I don't know. But this is where, you've got the technology of the iPhone has changed and it's set a new standard for how we do business. It hasn't eliminated people. So thinking about that in the same way that AI is coming, it's going to just change how we operate, but you still have to have people. And so we're big believers in the human interface and in business, having that kind of relational connection there. So yes, but I'm super pumped about it. I think some of the stuff we're doing internally, we've built a whole operating system, market intelligence tool.
Nice.
It's taken 60 days and, less money than anyone would ever imagine to get done.
Nice. Hey, Sean, let's jump into the rapid fire, man.
Yeah. I'm going to do some just quick hits. The first thing that comes to mind, you don't have to go into details with it. This is one of my favorite sections. Most influential book.
Man, I got a couple. Recent one is Comfort Crisis, Michael Easter. Leading with Prayer is a new one that I'm hot on, and then Blue Ocean Strategy is a great.
That's one you've been on for a while. When I met you, you talked about that. What's most overrated buzzword today?
There's a lot. I don't know what the most overrated would be. I don't have a good answer for that one.
All right, that's fair enough. Morning person or night owl?
Definite night owl.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. And then finally, biggest lesson aviation taught you about leadership?
Follow your checklist.
Amen to that. 100%. 100%.
Follow your checklist.
100%. So I gotta throw one in here for dinner party bragging rights. Pilot since 16, Self-Storage Association Foundation board member, building Liberty into a $1 billion investment platform. Which of the three gets the biggest reaction?
Oh man, I think most people get impressed with Pilot being there's not a ton that have done that, and so I think people enjoy learning about that.
Nice. So let's move a little bit into legacy and future vision for a second. 10 years from now, what does success feel like? Not the numbers, but the feeling.
Yeah, I think it feels to me it's achieving the balance of yield and impact, which comes from freedom, comes from a thriving company and great family relationships.
Nice. Well, one of my favorite questions is if you could assemble a personal board of directors from any era in history, living or deceased, who would have a seat at your table and why?
Yeah, I think first my boy Jesus, he'd hang out there with me. My wife, she knows me better than anyone else. I'm a Braveheart junkie. So William Wallace, I just love to hang out with that guy. And then I do love and appreciate kind of the learnings of Warren Buffett. So I think he's a good long-term investor. I think a lot of people have gotten so short-term in their thinking, but really respect what he had built.
Nice. So Sean, we've had an amazing time here with Adam.
Oh my gosh.
I mean, the nuggets.
Listen, I'm just
nuggets.
impressed that I was able to do all of this, because everybody else I've known for years. And I met Adam 3 years ago, and we've texted over the years and stuff like that. But oh man, unbelievable.
I'm looking forward to, in all seriousness, I would say, Adam, for us to meet up in person. The three of us, we definitely have to get together.
Yes.
And outside of this virtual realm here. But Sean, take us home.
Yeah. Adam, again, man, what stands out isn't the size of the company or the deals that you do. It's perspective. If the willingness to talk about adversity, relationships, faith, family, and what truly matters is what got me. I think our audience is going to really take to this one a lot.
Yeah, no, Adam, I second everything that Sean says there. And, the word that I keep coming back to is stewardship. And whether it's family, investors, employees, opportunity, or community, you've approached leadership as a responsibility rather than an entitlement. I go back to you saying that you didn't want to be known as your dad's son in the business. And you led by example. And that's a message every leader can learn from. And we're grateful you shared your story with us here today. I have an entire cheat sheet of nuggets that I am, this has been amazing.
Right.
And I will tell you, certainly I enjoy each and every one of these, but this one I really, really enjoyed. So thank you.
Well, no, thank you all for the time and the platform. And again, hopefully it's a blessing to someone. And always, one of the things that I want to leave people with is I'm here to help. So if there's anything I can do to help, happy to have that conversation with people and just challenge anyone to live their journey and live their life in the way that they're called to do it.
Yes. Then so anyway, with all of that being said, to our audience, man, I want to put a plug in for our CEO Leadership Forums group that we're going to meet August the 25th at downtown H&Co. And we're going to be discussing how to deal with AI in a leadership role. You can go to our website, ceoleadershipforums.com, for more information on that. But thank you for joining us on this episode of the Dynamic Business Leaders Podcast. Until next time, stay curious, stay driven, and keep leading with purpose like my man Adam is.
Hi, I'm Roy Richardson, host of the Dynamic Business Leaders Podcast. Are you a business owner or a leader of a successful business? If yes, we'd love to have you as a guest on our program. Our goal is simple. We provide a platform for leaders to share their experiences to benefit others. We want to hear your story, how you got started, the challenges you faced along the way, and your passion today. If this sounds like you or you know someone who fits these criteria, then be sure to get in touch with us by visiting our website linked in the episode description below. Also, don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel and click the notification bell to be notified when our next episode goes live. Or, if you'd rather listen to us during your car rides, you can also follow us on your favorite audio channel using your podcatcher. Thanks again, and remember, keep crushing it.